Hey, hey. All right. Impromptu. Well, not impromptu. You guys kind of knew it was coming because we told you. Live on a Sunday night. Hope you guys are having a good weekend. Get a lot of stuff done around the house with the family. We got Halloween coming up. So hopefully you are ready. You have your festivities, going. My wife is big into Halloween, so we are carving pumpkins tonight after dinner. But I wanted to get on here with you guys for about an hour and hang out, run down some questions since I'm not going to be here tomorrow night. I'm traveling to California, get some stuff done, and then we will have our event out there in Cali for the Mastermind on the 26th of October. So excited to see you guys out there in San Francisco. We're there for SF Fund Week with CoinAlts and a lot of the other stuff that's going on. So super excited about that for the Mastermind community. And, we'll run it down tonight here in the chat. But before we get into that, I promised you guys a juicy announcement. So I will deliver on that. It's just been crazy to see how many people we've been able to help at Digital Family Office and Digital Ascension Group make sure that they get structured before price appreciation happens. Make sure that their assets are protected, held at Anchorage, working there with DWP, which is an SEC registered RIA, they're registered with FINRA and the SEC. And our whole team there manages everything. I actually don't have any ability to see what's going on over there at DWP as far as client stuff goes. I'm not an access person. I just own the company. And we have licensed financial advisors and many other people there that run the fund and manage the day-to-day and work with all of our clients that are family office clients and just high net worth individuals that hold larger amounts of crypto. So if that is you, if you hold a significant allocation for yourself, whether that's in Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, Matic, Chainlink, Avalanche, XRP, XLM, or any of the other EVM-based tokens, we can do quant also. We provide institutional custody for people there. And up until this point, we've run a couple specials where we have dropped the minimums down for the amount of XRP that we're willing to work with people on. And the demand on that's been overwhelming. There's been a lot of people that have, somewhere between 50,000 XRP all the way up to, 1 to 2 to 5 to 20 to 40 million XRP that work with us at this point, and close to $1 billion in AUM over there, Digital Wealth Partners, which is just mind blowing. We actually took our first client in at Anchorage about 1 year ago today. So we've gone from 0 in AUM to almost $1 billion in AUM over there, Digital Wealth Partners, in just 12 months, which none of that's possible without you guys wanting to work with us. And just been incredible to watch it grow. We have over 2,000 clients over there at Digital Wealth Partners, working with them. We've got hired a bunch of advisors because we anticipate there's going to be a large movement in price and things moving here at the end of the year. I have that public bet that you guys know about, and anticipating a big move in XRP in particular before the end of the year, and a lot of volatility in markets. And we'll get into the macro on why that could happen here in just a little bit. But I want to make the announcement that, again, we've lowered the minimum a couple times to 50,000, and we've decided to go ahead and drop that minimum in perpetuity to 50,000 XRP to work with us at Digital Wealth Partners. So if you're in that range, if you want institutional custody, your spouse has no clue about this stuff, you want to get it protected and set up the right way so that you can, hold your assets over the long term, you get the same protections that BlackRock gets over there with Digital Wealth Partners. Your assets are held in institutional custody, segregated, bankruptcy remote, insured up to $100 million, which you're not going to get anywhere else. It's actual institutional custody. I actually put out a video. It's probably been, 3-4 months ago that I put out the video on what I believe institutional custody is. There's a lot of people out there that talk about the other people that provide institutional custody. They might use Fireblocks, they might use Ripple custody, they might use Copper. And if you're not a qualified financial institution, you don't have the licenses to be able to operate that way, which many exchanges don't. And I'm not poo-pooing on any of the exchanges. I'm just keeping it real with you guys. I don't really consider that institutional custody. There's a lot of exchanges that do have state chartered uh, bank charters at the state level, and those are great. We've got Kraken, we've got Coinbase, we've got many others that hold that designation, and they are bankruptcy remote at the state level. The reason we work with Anchorage is they are bankruptcy remote at the federal level. They are a federally chartered, OCC regulated bank. The only one currently, until Ripple gets theirs in the near future, that does actually provide that. And they work with RIAs. They have the full structure there for us to have an account, and then we create sub accounts, which are FBO accounts, or for the benefit of our clients. And the assets stay in your name. You stay in control. You get to hold the assets in institutional custody. Your spouse can be added to the account. And once you have your assets over there with us, then you're good to go. Your kiddos and the beneficiaries that you want on the account are set up the right way. God forbid something happens to you. We have had a few people that have had their assets on exchanges pass away, unfortunately, and the assets didn't get transferred to the people that they wanted them to, not in the manner that they wanted them to. They actually ended up with the cash. They liquidated the assets and gave them the cash, which is fine, right? Like, they got the value. But if you've made these investments with the thesis that you want to hold these assets over the long term and make sure that you have generational wealth because of it, then you want those assets to be able to be transferred to your kiddos. This person's asked a bunch over here on TikTok. He says, what makes DWP any different than Uphold if Uphold is the only reserve? Not sure what you mean by that. Uphold is not an institutional custodian. They've actually had a few people move assets away to move assets into institutional custody. Some larger clients of theirs, and we're talking to them about some of that. So we'll see what ends up manifesting there. But basically, we want to make sure that you have the same access to that as the big boys, the big whales that have millions of dollars that they can hold in an institutional custody account. And because of the way we're structured, you get the additional benefit on the fees. You get access to other products to be able to generate returns in a regulated way here in the US. There's nobody else doing what we're doing in a legal way. You've got a few other people out there, and I did a video on this as well when it comes to Doppler Finance and Axelar. There's a few other people out there generating yield in their XRP, which is great. Happy to see that. And for international clients, both of those work awesome. This person's asked about Caleb and Brown. I think that they're great. They are not a qualified custodian. They don't have the licenses to be able to operate in Australia as a financial institution. They do have some insurance on the accounts. They are segregated. They do audits. I like Caleb and Brown the way that they're set up. The fees over there are a bit high on the trading in comparison to what we have. So same thing with Uphold. Uphold's going to be a bit higher on the fees unless you're using their institutional account, which is Ascent. They have a great platform over there for an OTC desk. We have a good, strong relationship with them, and we do pass people to them frequently for larger trades if they can't quite make our minimums. But again, we're dropping those minimums. So if you have 50,000 XRP, we would love to work with you at Digital Wealth Partners. The dollar amount's going to stay the same, so at least $500,000 in total portfolio value. If you don't have it's or so 50,000 XRP or $500,000 in total portfolio value, and that can include your traditional assets. So if you have a 401k, if you have stocks and bonds and treasuries and other stuff, either on E-Trade or eToro or Webull or wherever it's at, we can work with you. Or if they're at Schwab or Fidelity, you can move them over as well. So let's say you only had 10,000 XRP or 20,000 XRP. If the total amount of your digital assets and your traditional portfolio in the 401k or IRA or whatever other qualified account you have totals $500,000, we would love to work with you as well. What's been brought up over here on TikTok as well, is the LLC. So you do have to have an LLC to work with us at Digital Wealth Partners and park your assets there at Anchorage. They will not work with individuals. We can do IRAs. We can do individual retirement accounts, but the accounts themselves need to be in a corporate name or a trust name. So if that's, a limited company somewhere else in the world, an LLC, a corporation, a trust, we can work with all of those, right? So as long as you are not a terrorist and you don't have any illicit activities, then we will be able to work with you. You just go through the KYB, KYC process, AML, all the stuff that is standard for any institution. They want to know who they're working with and make sure that you're not a bad actor. We do the same. And so we provide that information to them. They also have their own process. It's pretty streamlined at this point. This person says, how do I get a trust? We can help you set one up. We have plenty of people to be able to work with you, to be able to structure your stuff there in Wyoming or Nevada or South Dakota. Most of the time we do see Wyoming here domestically in the US, but we can do Portugal, we can do Cyprus, we can do Dubai in one of the free zones, we can do Switzerland, we can do Jordan or Gibraltar, we can do Australia, we can do Canada. We have professionals and partners all over the world that we work with to be able to help you get things structured the right way. Canada, yes sir, sure can, or ma'am. Aaron Grinhoss is our partner up there in Canada, and he can help you get things structured the right way, whether that's in the Caymans or Bermuda or they're in Canada. UK clients, yep, happy to work with you. We'd refer you over to our people in Portugal and Cyprus and get you going there. So, if you do want the benefit of institutional custody, we would love to work with you in that capacity. Make sure that you get access to the yield products that we're going to have coming in the near future that I think you're gonna like. Again, this is all regulated, done the right way here in the US, structured, not through, DeFi, although we do want to be progressive and get to the point where we can offer DeFi. And, we just want it done the right way. We don't want the ability for people or bad actors to take advantage of smart contracts and liquidate assets. Things need to be insured inside of institutional custody and done above the standard that we're looking to set. And again, with FTX and Voyager and Celsius and Mt. Gox and all the other things that have happened in the industry, I understand that people would be hesitant on the stuff we have going on. Fair play. I want you to do due diligence. I want you to go look up our CRD number over there with FINRA on BrokerCheck. You can look at all the licensed financial advisors that work for our firm. You can talk to people at our firm, make sure it's good, ask questions about the funds that we're able to offer over there at Digital Wealth Partners to be able to generate returns on your XRP as well. We can do Bitcoin. We can also generate returns there. And we'll continue to innovate and bring out additional products as we go. A lot of people are going to ask about fees, right? So want to address that. There are fees to work with us, just like there would be any other institutional custody out there. Thank you, darling. My wonderful wife with the tea. We got the Ripple mug tonight. It's pretty cool. So again, Caleb and Brown, they're charging you, 3.5% when you execute a transaction. We're 20 basis points. We don't take any upside on those transactions, and that's for any amount that you want to buy or sell. So if it's $1,000, if it's $10,000, if it's $2 million, you're good to go. 20 basis points. And that doesn't go to us. That just goes to our brokerage partners to be able to execute those trades. We were able to get people some XRP when the market was collapsing, and we saw that big liquidity event get sucked out of the market on Friday last week. We had people buy under $2. So that was pretty cool. A lot of people got locked out of the exchanges, and we were able to get people access to that stuff when it was happening. We also have limit orders. So let's say you do want to sell at a certain level, or you want to be able to buy at a certain level. The Jake Claver that's in the chat over here on TikTok is not me or our team. So if you guys want to block that person, Web3 is also a scam. So if anybody tells you about Web3, yeah, it's a scam. So anyway, back to the action here. So on the fees, it is $1,000 to onboard. If you want to set up the LLC, it's a couple grand. If you use the code 50OFF, 50OFFDAGLLC, that gets you everything all in and the corporate veil, everything that you would possibly want or need for an LLC to manage your digital assets. You're going to get the anonymity that provides. You're going to get the ability to mitigate taxes. It does not completely absolve you of taxes. Okay. I'm not saying that, but there are ways you can mitigate taxes if it's done inside of a corporation. And then addition to that, you get the creditor protection there in Wyoming. So not only do you get the anonymity, you get charging order protection in Wyoming when we set it up for you. And you can go do this yourself. You can work with another attorney. We provide the service because a lot of people need it. We've probably at this point set up over 4,500 LLCs there in Wyoming with our partners to be able to get people structured the right way. This is a holding company that manages alternative investments with a sleeve for your crypto. So the language is in the operating agreement. If you do have an attorney that sets things up that way, you know, they can help you do that. Most of the time, just the operating agreement by itself is going to be somewhere between 1,800 and 2,500 bucks. Again, we do the filing and everything for $2,000 if you use the code 50OFF50OFFDAG LLC at digitalfamilyoffice.io. Now, if you want institutional custody, he said, what's the discount code again? It's 50OFF, like off, DAG, like Digital Ascension Group, LLC, like limited liability company, and that's all capitalized. So once you get that set up, whether it's through us or another party, or you have your trust, or you have your international entity, whatever it might be, and you got at least 50,000 XRP, you're going to go to digitalwealthpartners.net. And that is where our SEC registered RIA can get you set up and going and work with you. You're going to get an email from Securitize, who's our partner over there. It's the UI that you're going to be able to look at all your stuff through that's held there at Anchorage and, you know, get access to all the other benefits. We can also provide lending against your digital assets, whether that's Bitcoin, ETH, Solana. We're pretty much the only people to do XRP. We've got exclusive relationships that allow us to do that. It's not a ton, you know, we can do up to 45% LTV and the interest rate's around 15%. So it's not the best thing in the world, but it is liquidity if you need it. And if you can make the payments, it's interest only. To do a balloon payment at the end, you can refinance it at the end of the term with the same collateral. Very easy to do. Continue to draw down credit if you want to, or lines of credit against it. Debt is not taxable, right? So, you know, I'm as hopeful as you guys are that we're going to get no capital gains on your digital assets, and that is going to incentivize people to sell some of their digital assets. But you know, for me, I think the pace at which this stuff is going to grow moving forward, as we get regulation, as we get adoption, is going to be exponential. And those that sell early may miss out on those gains. And I'm not saying don't take profit. You never go broke taking profit. Just be aware of the tax implications that you're going to have. And again, if you do it at Digital Wealth Partners, you're good to go. It's only 20 basis points. It's not 2 or 3%. There is no spread like you're going to get on exchanges. Almost all exchanges, even on the OTC desks, have a spread plus their fee when you do liquidate. So we are the cheapest solution on the market right now to be able to buy and sell digital assets over there at DWP. So back to the fees. $1,000 to onboard with Digital Wealth Partners. That creates your account at Anchorage, covers the KYB, KYC cost, and all the other compliance and stuff that we have to go through. And so we don't make much of that, but it gets the account set up for you. There are ongoing costs, right? So again, want to be completely transparent about this stuff. If you have 50,000 XRP and you don't want to pay fees, the minimum is going to be there, okay? So it's not a rush to the door with this deal. We are anticipating some large inflows. We've hired 10 more people in the last week to be able to accommodate that and make sure people get taken care of. It might take a little bit to get back to you, but for the most part, the standard of service that we want to provide is very high. And, you know, we try to be as communicative as possible and help people get through the door and make sure that they have their stuff set up the right way. So $1,000 to onboard. The ongoing fees are 2% per year for anything less than $5 million. And that, again, that gets you the advisor, that gets you the insurance, it gets the account set up where you can add beneficiaries and your spouse. It gets you access to all of the products and solutions that we have over there. And peace of mind for a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to hold this stuff on a cold wallet. that their spouse really doesn't know about, listed in their will, have it go through probate and get things, you know, in a bad spot. We do have living trusts that we can help structure for people that are onboarding. If you want a living trust in your state, it's just $400. And now you do have to fund that, and there's still some administrative stuff that we will help you with if you work with us on that too. I don't know that you're going to find anybody cheaper on the living trust stuff. Most of the time, it's a couple grand if you work with an attorney for $400. And we do a really good job. We make sure that everything's structured the right way and done, and the account gets funded, and the LLC is protected from probate, and then the assets are protected from creditors because they're in the LLC. So make sure you're working with good attorneys. Again, whether that's us or somebody else, make sure you're vetting them. You understand what you're getting and what you're paying for. So 2%, again, that's amortized monthly. So we do charge, monthly for the AUM fees there. AUM is assets under management. So let's say it's 50,000 XRP. What would that be today at we'll call it $2.50. That'd be 150 grand. It'd be 150 grand if it was $3. So a little bit less than that, 120 bucks. Or 120,000, 125,000, somewhere in there. And as you guys know, the price fluctuates daily. So it's hard to keep up with where it's at, even though I do think it's going to go much higher in the near future. So again, that's the benefit. You're structured the right way off the rip. If you want to take profits, you can take that to your corporate bank account. A business bank account is going to be a lot less likely to get flagged or have issues if you're moving large sums of money through it. Especially if you have it seasoned in, it's been open for 3 to 6 months. You're going to have a lot less issues when you're taking profit, or you put your assets to work with us and start generating returns on your assets to be able to get that passive income a lot of people have been hoping for. And I really do think you're going to be excited about what we're bringing to market and the partners we're bringing to the table to be able to generate the yield on the XRP. So we always, the goal is to pay for ourselves. If you want to wait, again, this minimum is dropping in perpetuity. It's 50,000 XRP. So, if you want to wait till, you're comfortable paying the fees on a monthly basis, or we have the yield product, then, make sure that you can cover those. We don't want to put people in a position where they're having to liquidate XRP. Our number one rule is don't lose XRP. Second rule is refer to rule number 1. So we definitely don't want that to be the case, and we don't want to put you in a position where you're having to do that. So be thoughtful about it. But we do want to protect assets and make sure people are set up the right way from the rip. So as your assets appreciate, fees go down, right? I've structured this in a way that I wanted to be treated as a client because, I'm one of you guys. I made a bunch of money in crypto in 20 and 21. And I was like, look, if I was working with a financial advisor, I don't want them to take upside on my assets. I made those investments. They're not entitled to that. So we don't. We take no fees on the upside as your assets continue to appreciate and grow over the long term. We do have to keep the lights on though. And that's why we charge the AUM fees. If we do, make you an additional 8% beyond the appreciation on your total account with us, we go 80-20 on anything above that. For a lot of people, they'll never get there. A lot of people are conservative. They have a shorter time horizon, 2% a month. No, it's not 2% a month. It's 2% per year. So it's about 17 basis points per month, or 17% of 1%. So, again, that is a little high. I get that, especially if you don't have that much and you're paycheck to paycheck with your job. That's why, I was like, look, let's not run a special. Let's just go ahead and drop the minimum for people so that when they are capable, then they're able to come in, right? So again, I know we're going to have a lot of volume on this. There's a lot of people that have been waiting that already have their LLC set up that have somewhere between 50, 70, 80,000 XRP that have been, just don't have the extra money to get to 100,000. We want to make sure those people are taken care of. And so we've dropped the minimum to 50. As your assets appreciate, the fees do go down. So over 5 million, it drops to 50 basis points. What's a basis point? It's 100 basis points is 1%. So the Fed, when they come out and talk about interest rates and they talk about basis points, that's what they mean. So when they drop 25 basis points, it's 25% of 1% is what that ends up being. So we dropped to 50 basis points or 50% of 1% when your assets are over 5 million. When they go over 10 million, which I think a lot of people are going to be there, that drops to 40 basis points or 40% of 1%. And again, that's prorated over the year to a monthly bill. And the yield product that we're coming out with will pay out monthly. The current stuff that we have there does quarterly returns, and you do have to be accredited in order to be able to access those options. But the yield product that we're bringing to market soon, you will not have to be accredited, and you will be able to participate right there out of your Anchorage account with no issues. So the assets stay in your account on the yield product. They'll be locked for whatever term, just like a CD would. Like you'd put that money in the bank and lock it up. You can break that term if you need to. We prefer not to, because of our partner. But we want to get this stuff as close as we can to DeFi. We're looking at a lot of money market products and other things to be able to invest in tokenized money markets and get your capital put to work in a way that's beneficial for you and your family. Can you explain the 80-20% over 8%? Okay, so let's do some math here on the performance fees. So we went over the AUM fees, we went over the onboarding fees, we went over the LLC costs, trusts, $400 for a living trust. Your assets don't go in there, just the LLC equity. And then if you do want to set up an asset protection trust or other types of trust, those can range anywhere from $15,000 up to $30,000. Just depends on what you want. All the bells and whistles and protections, those type of trusts, you get creditor protection and probate protection. They are irrevocable. They're not revocable like many living trusts. You're not the trustee on those trusts. So anyway, we'll circle back. So the 80-20. I like hedge funds. We run a hedge fund. That's how we're able to offer a securities offering and be able to get people returns legally on their XRP here in the US. We have, close to $300 million in the hedge fund, all in XRP right now. If it were in DeFi, it would be the largest DeFi pool for XRP in the world. But again, it's not DeFi. It's super safe. We've structured it. We've removed counterparty risk or mitigated that. And then, there are some risks with the hedge fund to where you can lose a little bit of XRP. But again, we've mitigated as much of that risk as possible. On a risk curve, like 1 being no risk, 10 being all the risk in the world, I would say we're at like a 1.8. There is a little bit of risk there, but we're targeting somewhere between 6 and 20% on those returns in those vehicles. This quarter should be a pretty good payout for people in the income fund. So separate of that, if you have your total portfolio with us, let's say you had $10 million with us in crypto. Okay. It's in, we'll call it XRP. When XRP is, $1,000, we'll just make it easy math here. So you've got 10,000 XRP with us at $1,000, you got $10 million with us. If as the XRP appreciates, we don't get any of that upside. But if we make you an additional 8% on your total portfolio denominated in XRP, so let's say, you had 10,000 XRP when you started, and we make you another 10% XRP. So we make you another 1,000 XRP over the year. The first 8,000 XRP are yours. There's no fees on those. That is all you. This is additional XRP that you're getting. So above and beyond whatever the high water mark was, which is December 31st the year before, or whatever you originally funded the account with. So we make you an additional 1,000 XRP on 10,000 XRP. Okay. That second 2% there. So the first 800 would go to you. The next 200, we would go 80-20 on. So what would that be? You would get 80% of that 200, and we would get 20% of that 200. So you would get another 160 XRP, and we would get 40 XRP. That's how the math works on that. And so if we make you money, we make a little money too. If we don't beat the 8% per year, you just pay AUM fees, and we still made you 8% on your money. And I'm sure there'll be people that game the system and want to make just that amount so they don't pay us any extra, and that's okay. Like I said, there's going to be some people that have a shorter time horizon and a lower risk tolerance, and we're going to be good fiduciaries and make sure that whatever we're doing is in your best interest and what you want as the client. We're We're not here to, I set this up so that people had a good place to go and options before price appreciation and after price appreciation to make sure that you're taken care of and you're not just a number. That's our goal with this, because that's how I want to be treated as a client. I have my assets over there at Anchorage, and everything's been rocking along great. Again, warm and fuzzy because now BlackRock has their stuff over there too. So that's how the performance fees work. AUM fees work the way that I laid out: 2% for anything less than 5 million. Anything between 5 and 10 million drops to 50 basis points. Anything over 10 million goes to 40 basis points. And so let's say you had $10 million with us, and we made you 4% through the yield product that we're going to get out to market. You would owe us 40 basis points, and you would get to keep 3.6%, basically risk-free on that. Park there, not, and you're getting monthly income off of that. So if you got enough money, that could be a lot of money. If you had $10 million, that's going to be $360,000 a year that you're getting in cash, like 30 grand a month, tax-free. Well, not tax-free, still be taxed. Whatever income is going to be taxed. But risk-free, basically, for the way that we're going to structure it. Again, I think you guys will really like what we put together. So it should be coming to market here in Q4. And again, really excited to be able to drop these minimums for you guys and get you in at 50,000 XRP. We know, again, we've had a lot of people reach out that want to work with us, and it wasn't really tenable for them to get to the 100,000 XRP that we had before. And just really excited for the people that have reached out. We let people know this in the Mastermind yesterday. So again, if you guys want to join the Mastermind, we talk about all this stuff, a little bit sooner than we bring it out to the public. You're going to get the edge on everybody else if you're there in the Beyond Broke Mastermind. Just go to beyondbroke.com and use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar, or the abbreviation for month. All of that's capitalized. Get you your first month for $2 for social or for Carbon One. So that's the cool, juicy news for you guys, and we'll continue to bring that out over the next couple of weeks here. I think we're going to have some other really cool things that we get to tell you about, some of the partnerships and things that we're working on. But I will save those for the later one. We'll go ahead and hop into the questions. I am only going to run it down for about an hour tonight. Like I mentioned, it is close to Halloween, and I'm traveling next week. I want to spend some time with my kiddo, carve pumpkins, and do all the fun dad stuff. So we'll hang out for another 30 minutes here and get through the super chats. We got Neil. He says, "Hey Jake, hope all is well. Can social members attend the event in San Francisco? I can't seem to find the link in the website." Yes, sir. We would love to have you there. Anybody in the Mastermind can attend our events. Again, that's a private event for Mastermind members there in San Francisco on the 26th. A week from today, it'll be Sunday evening about this time. We will be there in San Francisco with our group. We have almost 250 people that are registered for that event. Neil, if you want to ask in the general chat or in Carbon One, I'm sure people would, provide you the link, and you can also check the events tab in the Discord up at the top, and there'll be a link there as well for the Luma. Let's go. Lots of people excited here in the chat, which is awesome. I like doing these Monday and Wednesday, but again, traveling tomorrow, so I wanted to make sure we got one done for you guys before we headed out. Live for Crypto says, "Sup, Jake? Been a lot going on. They're trying to shake people out. They're trying to shake rumor of market cap going lower." Yeah. I will say big blockchain backer is a bit shaken with everything that's going on. And he's not wrong. Like, there's a lot of market dynamics right now that are very different than what they've been in the past. And he's looking at past charts and kind of trying to predict the future, which is what he does. It's TA. He's done very well with that. He was 50% out of the market before we saw the liquidation last Friday. So kudos to him for making that call. And I think he bought back some and made a trade. Now he's back to 50-50. Once he gets to 65% out of the market in his positions, that's kind of him wrapping up and walking away. But that's all he does, right? His income and his job is to day trade. He does a lot more longer term swing trades, which I do really appreciate. And then he has his YouTube, which does pretty well for him too. So just be aware of that and take it with a grain of salt when you're listening to him. If you're a long term investor, and you know, got shook out of Bitcoin at a, you know, 100, 500, 1,000, 10,000, whatever it was, and you didn't buy back, you missed out on a lot of upside. So I think investing is a longer time horizon, 4 or 5 years at a minimum. If you're investing in, you know, digital assets, investing is that same time horizon. If you're a trader, then you might be investing on a shorter term time horizon, and then you might have a little bit more, you know, movement in your portfolio. I'll just continue to dollar cost average. I'm here for the long term, just like most of you guys. We got blessed and highly favored. I love the name. I said, "Hey, legend, Beyond Broke Carbon One, such a great value provide to us. Thank you for all that you do for us. Would have never thought on Render. What's your thoughts on Render in 3 to 5 years?" Render is really interesting. So they repurpose Bitcoin's infrastructure to be able to render movies much faster with the GPU and compute that those have. I like Render. I think Render will be around. It has a clear use case. As far as price point on Render, don't know. I'd have to go do some research on the market cap for the use case that you know, they're providing, and then, you know, you always end up with like a couple other competitors in certain areas as markets become saturated. Right now, I think they're the only one doing what they're doing. I don't know of any competitors for Render, but as they continue to grow and aggregate market share, probably end up being the Google of that space. You know, it's a unique niche, and I think that they could probably get 80% of all movies rendered or something through their network and their protocol. And if that ends up being the case, you can probably go out there and look at how much money is spent each year on that, and then figure out, you know, a reasonable price target. We got Crypto Keeper. He says, "Good evening, my man. Will you or any of your team be at Blockchain Life Convention in Dubai next week? Can't wait." Shout out to you, man. I love Dubai. I've been a couple times. Definitely want to go back. We were there for Swell in 2023 and really had a good time. Safest place I've ever been. You know, I've lived here in the United States my whole life, and Texas, and that it's safer than here. Like I was blown away by the culture there in Dubai and everything that they all have going on. So kudos to you. I wish I could say we were going. We will not be there next week. We will be over at CoinAlts at the end of this month, and so unfortunately I won't be able to make it out there. Or anybody on our team. We got DFW Mike, my man. He says, "Evening, legend. With Larry Fink talking about tokenizing ETFs coming, do you believe he is talking about BlackRock's XRP ETF?" NASDAQ has applied for their ability to tokenize stocks with the SEC. And so we know that's coming. I do think it's going to be a 2026 thing. I don't think it's going to be this year. I think that they're going to launch a lot of these spot ETFs on the traditional market without, you know, any tokenization really in play. I think probably Q2, early Q2 next year is when we're going to start seeing tokenization of the stock markets. We got K87. They say, "Legend. I have enough XRP to join DWP, DWP. Just worried if I put my XRP into the LLC and instead of low 3 figures in December, the whole market cap completely dumps. The tax implications for me and the New Zealand would be too much next year." Yeah, other jurisdictions are weird. I'd work with somebody there in New Zealand, or we can get you with our group over there that also sets stuff up in the Cook Islands. We have a few people in New Zealand that we work with, and they can probably give you legal counsel on the best way to do that. Australia, you know, if you move it into a family trust, you are going to owe the taxes earlier on, but that's going to be much lower if you get it in now versus post price appreciation. I personally don't think we're going to see a big pullback this market cycle in XRP and the utility driven assets like we've seen in the past. I think that they will decouple from Bitcoin. I think once there's enough liquidity in some of these assets and protocols, they'll start being used at scale globally for different things. And at that point, you know, they won't have that cyclical pattern where they pull back down with the rest of the market. Crypto Junkies asked, so for $200 fee at the price of $250, $200 a month, and does that fee double when XRP doubles? Yes. Yeah, the fee would go up with the total dollar amount in the account. So again, that's what I'm saying. Like if the fees scare you, if it's too much for you right now, the 50K is going to stay there. It's not going away. It's not like you rush and get in and then we charge you and lock you into it. I don't want to do that. There's been a few people, I wouldn't say they were disgruntled, but maybe they were a bit confused about that before. I don't ever want people to feel hoodwinked or bamboozled or like they were taken advantage of. We've just lowered this in perpetuity. So if it's not a good fit right now, if you aren't comfortable with the fees, cost to benefit ratio, we're not going anywhere. You can wait until later on when that's more tenable, or you're certain that we have the yield product in place and you're able to put it there and be able to make sure you're covering those costs without having to think about it. We got Charles Miller, my man. He says, what are your thoughts on the partnership with G Treasury and Thunes? G Treasury, I haven't seen their partnership with Thunes, but I know that they are integrated with Hidden Road and they do the treasury management for almost 200, there's more than that, large enterprises globally. That's the Trojan horse. Like, I don't know. I don't think you guys really comprehend what happened on Thursday with the announcement of that acquisition. XRP is now in the castle. Like, it's behind the walls. And if the other banks aren't going to start using it, Ripple is going to force their hand because they're going to be so competitive and way better on fees and everything else than all the other people that do it. Everybody else is going to have to adopt it to be able to keep up. And I think that's, what's going on there. Super excited about that acquisition too. We've got Off the Grid Hero. He says, what would it take XRP to be 100K and what year? Derivatives market, and you'd have to have tokenization of real estate and a lot of other assets at scale, like almost everything. I think by 2030, 85% of the total economy will be tokenized and on chain. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer than that, but I think that's, next 5 years, we're going to see a very accelerated pace of assets moving on chain. And the more value and markets that have transfers and settlement and transactions moving at scale daily that move on exchange or move on chain, the more value XRP will have to settle on the back end of all of that. You've seen all the rails and the interoperability built out at this point. And, you've got Wormhole, you've got Axelar, Quant and Overledger. There's a lot of things that allow for interoperability between all these ecosystems and networks for the Internet of Value and distributed ledger tech to really do what it's supposed to do. So you need derivatives, you need real estate, some of the things that I think aren't going to happen at least for another couple of years. And once you have full clarity on or visibility on all of the risk associated with derivatives and people can underwrite that and understand, where the problems are, I think you'll get a greater adoption of derivatives. Right now, you can't even quantify the derivatives market. It's somewhere between 400 trillion and $4 quadrillion. They don't know what the notional value of it is. So if it's closer to the high end of that, and I think we'll see an expansion in derivatives, tokenized derivatives, there'll be looping, there'll be all kinds of fun stuff, risky stuff that you can do with, the tokenization of things, because you'll get that representation of value that you can then go do something else with. People will stack stuff, and then there's more and more derivatives in that market. And as long as the base is solid, if XRP becomes a tier 1 asset, you have US treasuries, you have gold, there's going to be a lot of stuff that you can use as collateral in that market for derivatives. And over the past, 50 years, and really derivatives market hasn't even been around that long, last 20 years, it's really just been US treasuries that people lend over and over again to each other, because that's the tier 1 collateral that they can use. So excited to continue to see that expand and what's going to happen there. And that's, what it's going to take to get it to 100,000. And, Elon says we're going to be on Mars by 2030. I don't bet against him at this point. If that's his objective, I would say he's probably right. And, if that's the case, we're going to have interplanetary commerce and a lot of other economies that don't even exist today that'll be settled on chain. We got Mohammed. Thank you for the super chat, my man. He says, you're a legend. Fan watching from SA. What scenario could make the reverse carry trade fall to boost XRP? I've been over this a couple different times, but oil is what I'm watching. You know, oil continues to fall, and a lot of people are concerned about that. Oil falling is not going to make the reverse carry trade unwind, but when it does spike, there needs to be some type of event or catalyst, either with Russia or in the Middle East, with conflict there, that would cause price of oil to skyrocket and energy costs there in Japan to skyrocket, and then their bank, the BOJ or Bank of Japan, would have to raise interest rates aggressively to quell that inflation in their economy, and they could point to that as their scapegoat, and it wouldn't be their fault. And I think that that's what we're waiting for. So I'll keep beating that drum, but that's what I'm watching. Work hard, play hard says, is the government shutdown throwing a wrench in the gears? I think it's actually helping for what I'm hopeful for. If you had the Clarity Act play out, there may be some competitors to XRP that could then start to settle things and compete for separate, markets and back-end settlement. Right now, XRP is the only thing that has clarity in the US as not a security and as a currency from FinCEN. So really, it's uniquely positioned. And as long as the Clarity Act is continued to be pushed out, the more chance that it's going to be XRP that sees the lion's share of adoption, in my personal opinion. And whether that was orchestrated or not, you can make your own opinions on it. But that is where things sit today. We got Game of Cats. He says, legend. You think Ripple buying back 1 billion XRP would impact the incoming supply shock and was intentional? Thank you. I do. They're going to raise $1 billion. So it's not 1 billion XRP. It's $1 billion to help Arrington with his SPAC. They are, with a seed investor on that round for that. Arrington already has a fund, I think, that has, close to 100 million XRP in it, maybe a little bit more than that. His fund is denominated in XRP, and I need to talk to him about his fund admin, to be honest with you. So, yeah, it could definitely, and we're going to continue to see ETFs. We're going to see DATs. We're going to see other structured products that are holding XRP that continue to buy it up off the open market. And the less and less there is for trade, the less and less there's available. When there is a significant amount of demand all at one time, it will cause a significant rise in the price. We got Jayhawk Nation, my man. How are you, sir? He says, Rock Chalk, Jayhawk. Thanks for all that you do. As usual, we just bought our last big buy and locked ourselves into the top 2% of wallets. The information and training you've shared will be life-changing for many. Thank you for that, man. I really do appreciate it. So like, I get a lot of fulfillment from this. I just want to educate people. Again, and I should probably just give my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes only. If you need an attorney, if you need a tax advisor, CPA, if you need a financial advisor, we have all those licensed and credentialed professionals to be able to provide that advice for you. I'm not one of those. I'm not licensed. I'm just some guy on the internet that gets on here and talks, about the cool stuff that you guys want to talk about. But if you need those people, you can absolutely reach out to digitalfamilyoffice.io. You can email info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, and we can provide you with all those professionals that are either in-house or outsourced, that we partner with here domestically in the US and globally. Sal says, thank you, man. Excited to be working with you. I'm assuming you're talking about the special. So for, again, the show, many of you may have jumped on here later. If you have at least 50,000 XRP, we are now dropping the minimum at Digital Wealth Partners to be able to work with anybody that has 50,000 XRP and has their assets set up in an entity, whether that's in an IRA, a trust, or an LLC. We can help you with the LLC or the trust. If you have an IRA from iTrust Capital or Bitcoin IRA or one of the other ones and you want to move it over, we're also going to have a really cool product for IRAs in the near future that we're going to be making some announcements about. So, and that takes a little longer to move those assets over. We do charge AUM fees on those also, all assets that are with us, but you can use your IRA plus your personal assets to meet the 50. So let's say you had 25,000 in an IRA and you got 25,000 in your personal name. That meets the qualification of a total of 50,000 XRP. And again, we would love to work with you at Digital Wealth Partners. Mikey Mike, what's up, man? He says, hello, Mr. Jake from Canada. And yes, it's getting cold here. I bet it is, dude. If I move to Alberta, I become the 51st state, then I can get an LLC and all the good stuff. Thanks for everything, legend. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for taking time out of your evening and hanging out with us. I don't know if Canada is gonna be the 51st state. That'd be cool. I think some people there in Canada would be okay with it, but I think a lot of people have a lot of national pride there. I don't think that Trump's gonna be able to get that one across the line. All right, scrolling on down. Hang out for another 10 minutes here, and then we're gonna wrap it up tonight. We got Echo, my man. He says, do you think our XRP and ROUSD could be used for bad actors such as Palantir, BlackRock, Digital ID, Project 2030, own nothing and be happy? Yeah, I do. Here's the deal for me. I think all that's going to happen irrespective. The only way that you can change that, so I'll just get on my soapbox for a second here. My dad died 4 years ago this month. And before he passed away, he was very upset with how the world was. He was mad that they were taking our information, on social media. And he told me, you need to get off Facebook and delete your account. You need to call your congressman. The harsh truth of reality that we live in is that if you don't have leverage or capital or clout, you're not going to be able to affect much change. XRP and owning these digital assets is our chance to be able to have a seat at the table with these people and make sure that the best decisions are being made. They can't take the XRP from you. They can't freeze it. They can't claw it back. If they made it illegal, none of them are going to be able to use it. And that's the other reason we like to set up corporations for people. I think there may be a situation where only companies can own XRP and use XRP. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but they could write whatever laws they want, but they're not going to write laws that circumvent or prevent their ability to use it, right? So if you can align yourself with them and we get the adoption and the appreciation on this stuff, a lot of us are going to have some say-so, and we'll be able to fight back against things that aren't best for people. And so that's really my objective with a lot of this. Again, I took what my dad said to heart, but I just understood like the world works a certain way. And until you're in a position to be able to have say-so, they're not going to listen to you. And so that's my hope for a lot of people here that are holding large amounts of these assets. You're going to get some say-so, and we can help you with that. Digital Wealth Partners is a united front of the XRP family. You get individual segregated accounts. It's separated out. Your assets aren't commingled. It's insured. You get all the benefits of your own cold wallet, but we're a united front, right? Like the aggregate total value of the XRP and all the people that we represent, we'll be able to make sure that your interests are upheld. We'll be able to make sure that we're at the table helping with legislation on this stuff. We're already on the digital chamber proposing legislation to the SEC and these other regulatory bodies. And just really blessed to be in a position to hopefully affect good change and make sure that some of the things you mentioned here with digital identity and Project 30 or 2030 and own nothing and be happy, there's going to be, it's on a bell curve. It's not going to be a dystopian world. It's not going to be a utopian world, but we can try to make it lean toward the utopian if we have a say-so. If none of us are at the table, they're just going to do what they want. And so that's really the ethos and the thesis behind a lot of what I've created and what I've built, and what, none of it's possible without you guys. But if we band together, we will have an opportunity to make sure that that stuff isn't used in a way that's detrimental for the masses, right? For the little guy. We got Shannon, Miss Stewart. She says, if some of our assets are on a hot wallet such as Exodus, do they need to be moved to cold storage to be put into an LLC? No, you can leave them there on Exodus or Atomic or whatever hot wallet you have. Zamen's a hot wallet also. Used to be Zum or Sum, however you want to say it. We'd say Win's wallet. You can use that wallet address when you move it into the LLC. You're perfectly fine to do that. And then, you know, if you want to move it over to Anchorage and work with us, we generate you another wallet that's specifically yours there at Anchorage, where your assets, again, are segregated, bankruptcy remote, and insured. And they're not going to be hacked. Atomic had a pretty big breach and people lost assets there. I don't know if Exodus did or not. I can't remember on that one. But that's my concern, is that, you know, things, I just want to make sure people's stuff is protected. And again, I built a lot of this stuff selfishly. Like everything that we have put together is because I went through it myself and I wanted to have these things for my family, and the way that I can give back to the XRP community and all the wonderful people that we have is to build it where they can participate too. Sorry. You know, I'm not AI. I've got a moth in the room here with me. So anyway, yeah, again, a lot of this was built selfishly, but I want to make sure that other people have the opportunity to use it as well. And again, united and together, we can really make a difference and make sure that some of the stuff that we do know is inevitably coming is used the right way, and we have a say so. This person says, do you think Exodus wallet is good for XRP? I held some XRP in Exodus for a while. I think that hot wallet's interesting. Anytime you have your stuff connected to the internet, though, you have liability and risk. Just know that, right? So the way that we do it is we hold the asset there in cold storage at Anchorage, and then we reflect it with a counterparty. The asset stays in your possession and our possession so that there's no counterparty risk. And so, you know, we've mitigated having to give up your XRP to somebody else to generate returns. And that's the dream, right? Keep your XRP, have your cake and eat it too. And DFW Mike says, hello again. What's up, my man? He says, I think you may have changed my wife's mind about XRP. She has applied for and gotten her Gemini XRP card. Now we both have one. That's awesome, dude. I'm glad to help on that. My wife still thinks I'm crazy most of the time, but she's starting to come around on it. So, you know, hopefully, hopefully it eases some tension between you and your spouse. At the end of the day, you're trying to do what's best for you and your family, and you're taking a risk. And, you know, I don't like to speak to genders, but women tend to want to feel secure and safe, right? And when you're risking something that's significant, whether that's the savings for the family or, you know, other things that might not be a for sure thing, I can understand why people would not be so sure and be concerned about it. And those are completely legitimate concerns. I've just been in enough rooms with the right people and been blessed to have conversations, super grateful for everything that's happened to me over the last 4 or 5 years here, to be in a position to have absolutely no doubt that this is where things are going to go. And so, you know, if I'm able to convey that to some of you guys, again, a lot of fulfillment doing these. Mr. Rob, he says, hey, Jake, thanks for lowering the amount of onboarding to 50,000 XRP. That's great. My question is, if I am a little short, but have the cash to make up the difference, can you help us with setting up the purchase? Yeah, we sure can. You can move over what you have and then send over a wire, and we can buy the rest for you cheaper than you could get it anywhere else. We would love to help you out with that. I'm going to grab a couple more here, and then we're going to wrap it up tonight again. Sorry to cut it short. I'm going to go spend some time with my kiddo and carve pumpkins and enjoy the weekend. And I was just traveling tomorrow, and so I wanted to make sure we got at least one of these done before I head out of town. And so that's, you know, why we bumped it up to Sunday night. Probably cutting in on some people's football. Sorry. William Wise, he says, fantastic that you're almost at $1 billion AUM. However, do you have a plan to increase your current $100 million insurance policy to cover this? We do. Yeah. So as we haven't had any clients yet that have more than 100 million with us, but I think we will. I think we'll have a lot of people that have billions of dollars with us in the near future. And we can get species insurance on each account that adds additional insurance coverage on those. One of the other features that we have there at Anchorage is called whitelisting or green listing wallets. And what that does is, even if somehow it were hacked, which is highly unlikely, again, you know, the infrastructure that they built there is extremely robust on the back end, and I can explain it for you guys if you want me to. But at the end of the day, it's insured up to 100 million, and we can get species on that account to be able to, you know, up that insurance. We could even do captive insurance at some point in the future. That's on our roadmap, where people pool assets together to be able to provide captive. If you go look up the Rockefellers and a lot of these large families, that's what they do. They create their own captive insurance policy and they self-insure. If there's no breaches and there's no issues, they get paid out the dividends in that money that they paid in premiums. So pretty interesting. But again, back to the whitelisting. God forbid something happens, something crazy happens, some quantum computer does something. Worst thing that can happen at Anchorage with a whitelisted wallet on your account is, guess what? They send it back to your cold wallet. They can't send it anywhere else. It's kind of like Vault for Uphold. The only place that you can send your assets once it's in the vault is back to Uphold. So it's kind of a one-way in, one-way out thing. And you can whitelist as many wallets as you want. You know, you can withdraw your assets whenever you want to from Digital Wealth Partners. If you do participate in some of the products, there are some lockup periods. I think like 60 days is what we ask, you know, from people. But again, over the long term, we want to get this, we're trying to walk the line of, you know, regulated stuff, and then also being able to provide people as close as we can get to DeFi. So we'll grab one more and then we'll wrap it up tonight. Let me go all the way to the bottom and see if I missed any big super chats here. Sorry about TikTok over here. My phone just died. So it's a good time. Again, if you guys need the LLC, here it is from Liners. Here's the code. It's 50 off 50OFFDAG LLC. Get you everything end to end for your holding company that manages alternative investments with a sleeve for your crypto. And the reason we set it up that way is not a trading LLC. You're going to be able to benefit from the long-term capital gains. And the way that we structure it, there's no tax implications moving the assets in there, like, you know, apparently there is in New Zealand and some other jurisdictions like Australia. And again, that's a prerequisite. You will have to have that in place before you can work with Digital Wealth Partners or a trust or an IRA. We'll go with this one for the last one. We got KK Pond, my man. How are you, sir? He says, if JP Morgan sends Bank of America 1 billion XRP as a bridge and Bank of America converts it into a stable coin, would that be demand neutral? Does it have zero impact? Is that realistic? Well, that XRP would be back off the market and not being used, right? So if JP Morgan was sending XRP over there to Bank of America to settle a transaction, it was held by JP Morgan. It's being used to settle that transaction, and now it's being held by Bank of America because they're going to swap it to the stablecoin. They're going to hold it on their side. The decentralized ledger uses XRP as the DEX, or the settlement between the counterparties, and exchange real-time or atomic settlement between the two tokens. So realistically, what they would do is JP Morgan would send 1 billion JPM coin, $1 billion worth of JPM coin to Bank of America, and they would receive $1 billion of Bank of America coin. But it would be routed through XRP that was available in the DEX or a liquidity pool that was set up. So, you know, each one of those transactions, if it's routed through XRP, is demand for XRP. And it's really the volume of transactions. So that one transaction by itself would be neutral. You really wouldn't see a whole lot. It's the continual demand and settlement of these markets and payments that's going to hold price stability up high for XRP over the long term. Once there's enough liquidity in XRP to start settling those transactions, and we have all these stable coins issued over there on the EVM sidechain or via hooks on that sidechain. I'm sorry if I missed your super chat. If you guys do want to join the mastermind, again, we would love to have you in there. We are going to lock it down on the other side of a $10 XRP. It will be invite only to the mastermind at that point. But if you want to get in before then, we would love to have you. All you got to do is go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar. Get you the first month for $2 there in social or Carbon One. And again, we would love, love, love to see you out there in San Francisco. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you guys have a wonderful week, a wonderful night, and we will see you guys on the next one.